and welcome back to Away from the World. My name is Tara. In my last video, we talked about why so many people feel bloated, anxious, and tired, even when they're doing everything right. So if you watched that and felt a sense of relief, like, oh, this finally makes sense, then this video is going to take it deeper. And if you're new here, you don't need to go all the way back and watch anything first because this video also stands on its own. And if you're new here, you don't need to go all the way back and watch anything first because this video also stands on its own. So today I wanted to talk about something that almost never gets named in wellness spaces, but explains a huge percentage of digestive symptoms, and that is overstimulation. Not panic, not burnout, not high stress in the obvious way, but this constant low-grade state of activation that the body never really gets to come out of. When the nervous system stays in that state, digestion is one of the first symptoms to be affected. And this is why so many people can eat well, do all the right stuff, and still feel off. So in this video, I want to help you understand what overstimulation actually looks like in real life, how it shows up in digestion specifically, and why trying harder to fix your digestion usually makes it worse. This isn't about fixing anything today. It's more about shining a light on and understanding what's been happening so your body can finally stop feeling like it's under constant pressure. So let's start with what overstimulation actually means, because it's not what most people think. When most people hear the word overstimulation, they think of panic, burnout, or being completely overwhelmed. But that's not actually what I'm talking about. Overstimulation is often much quieter than that. It's this constant low-grade state of activation that the body never really gets to come out of. It doesn't feel dramatic. It just feels like always being a little on. So you're thinking about what to eat, when to eat, what's best for your digestion, you're tracking, you're planning, you're adjusting, you're moving from one task to the next without much pause. Even when you're resting, your mind is still engaged. And from the body's perspective, that's still stimulation. Overstimulation usually doesn't come from one big stressor. It comes from accumulation. Too much information, too many decisions, too many inputs, too many things asking for your attention. And this is especially common in people who are health conscious because you're not just living your life, you're constantly monitoring it. What this creates is a nervous system that stays mildly activated all day long. Not enough to trigger panic, but enough to keep the body from feeling fully settled at any given time. And when the body doesn't settle, digestion is usually affected. Digestion requires a shift into a slower, more receptive state. It needs the nervous system to downshift, but overstimulation tells the body to stay constantly alert. So even if you're sitting down to eat, your nervous system may still be in doing mode. So that's why people can eat nourishing food and still feel bloated, heavy, or uncomfortable afterwards. And in some cases, the issue isn't the food itself, it's the state that the body is in while receiving that food. And this is also why digestion often feels worse when you're eating in a rush, multitasking, thinking about what you should be eating, or anything but actually focusing on your food. The body is picking up on stress, not nourishment, and the more you try to fix digestion from that state, the more activated that system becomes. Because from the body's perspective, constant adjustment is still stimulation. This is why so many digestive symptoms don't respond to more information or more effort. They respond to the body feeling safe enough to slow down. And once you understand this, it starts to explain why digestion is often the first thing to feel off, even before your energy or your mood noticeably shift. Digestion is very sensitive, and it's one of the earliest symptoms to reflect how regulated or overstimulated the body is. And that sensitivity isn't a flaw, it's feedback. Digestion is often the first symptom to change when the body is overstimulated, and that's not random. Digestion is one of the most energy-demanding processes in the whole body. It requires blood flow, coordination, and a nervous system that's willing to slow down. So when the body even feels mildly under pressure, it starts making decisions about where the energy goes. and digestion is very rarely the top priority. The nervous system's job is to keep you feel safe. So when there's constant stimulation, noise, information, decision-making, self-monitoring, the body shifts into a more alert state and energy gets redirected towards awareness, movement, and vigilance. And that usually means that a lot less energy is available for digestion. And this doesn't mean that digestion stops completely. It means that it becomes a lot less efficient. Food moves slowly or unevenly, and sensitivity increases. The gut becomes more reactive, and this is why people often feel bloated, full, or uncomfortable after meals, even meals that are fairly small. It's also why digestion can feel unpredictable in some people. Some days feel okay, other days feel off for no obvious reason. And what's changing isn't the food, it's the state of the nervous system. This is also why digestion is so closely linked with anxiety. The gut and the nervous system are in constant communication. And when the nervous system feels activated, the gut reflects that activation. So digestive discomfort can increase anxious sensations, and anxious sensations can further disrupt digestion. It becomes this feedback loop. Another important piece here is sensitivity. When digestion is overstimulated, the gut becomes more sensitive to normal sensations. Things that wouldn't normally register suddenly feel uncomfortable. And this doesn't mean damage, it means that the system is on high alert. And the more you notice and focus on these sensations, the more the nervous system stays engaged. That's why a lot of people often say that once they start paying attention to their digestion, it often feels a lot worse. And that's not because awareness is bad, it's because attention without regulation adds stimulation. And this is also why lab tests often come back normal, because structurally everything may look fine, but on a functional level, the system isn't in an ideal state to digest your food comfortably. And that distinction matters because functional issues respond best to changes in state, not force. And once you understand that digestion is responding to nervous system signals, not the food, the next question becomes clear. If overstimulation is keeping digestion on edge, what actually helps it feel safe again? When digestion is overstimulated, it doesn't usually announce itself loudly. It shows up in patterns. And once you know what to look for, these patterns often become very clear. One of the most common signals is bloating after meals, not just after heavy or unfamiliar foods, but after meals that should feel fine. You eat, and instead of feeling nourished or satisfied, you feel uncomfortable, heavy, puffed up. Another common sign is feeling worse after so-called healthy foods. Raw vegetables, salads, smoothies, or high-fiber meals may leave you feeling more bloated or uneasy instead of energized. And that doesn't mean these foods are bad. It means your digestion may not be in a state to process them comfortably. Another sign is that anxiety increases after eating. And this is something that you may not notice. It means your digestion may not be in a state to process them comfortably. Another sign is anxiety that increases after eating. You might notice your mind feeling more active, your body feels restless, and there's a subtle sense of unease that wasn't there before the meal. This often gets mistaken for a blood sugar issue or a food intolerance, but many times it's actually a nervous system response. There's a subtle sense of unease that wasn't there before the meal, and this often gets mistaken for a blood sugar issue or a food intolerance, but many times it's actually a nervous system response. Feeling full very quickly can also be a sign. You start eating and feel done much sooner than expected, not satisfied, just full. And that early fullness is often a sign that digestion is under strain. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, some people notice alternating digestion. Constipation one day, loose stools another, digestion that never really feels consistent. That variability often reflects fluctuations in the nervous system regulation rather than a single food problem. Another common sign is feeling tired but wired. You're absolutely exhausted, but your system doesn't feel settled. So you might rely on caffeine to get through the day, but it actually doesn't make you feel better. It just keeps you going. And cravings for stimulants can increase in this state. Coffee, sugar, anything that gives a temporary boost. And remember, those cravings aren't from a lack of discipline. They're a sign that the body is trying to compensate for low energy while staying alert. One important thing to understand is that these signs don't mean that something's wrong with you. It just means that your body is responding to stimulation. They're functional signals and they're not failures. And because they're functional, they can change when the signals change. Once you start seeing these patterns, the goal isn't to analyze them endlessly. It's simply to recognize that the digestion is asking for a different environment. No more fixing, no more control, but more support. And this is where so many people get stuck because the instinct is to try harder, to add more rules, to make more changes. But that approach often keeps the nervous system activated even more. So let's talk about when trying to fix digestion can actually make overstimulation worse. At this point, a lot of people realize what's happening and think, okay, now that I know what's wrong, how do I fix it? And that instinct makes complete sense, but this is also where so many people accidentally make things worse. Because when digestion feels off, the natural response is to intervene, to do more research, to track more, to adjust food, timing, supplements, routines. But from the body's perspective, all of that is still stimulation. So even when the intention is healing, trying to fix digestion often adds pressure to a system that's already overloaded, and you start paying closer attention to every sensation. Every meal becomes something to evaluate, every symptom becomes data, and that constant monitoring and tracking keeps the nervous system alert. The body doesn't feel supported, it feels watched. This is why so many people often say that the more they focus on digestion, the worse it feels. It's not because awareness is harmful, it's because attention without regulation increases activation. Another issue is constant change. Switching diets, adding supplements, removing foods, adding new foods, trying new routines every few weeks. The body never gets a chance to adapt. A consistency is very calming to the nervous system, while frequent change is not. And even good changes requires energy to process. So when digestion is already really sensitive, making more changes keeps it from settling down. And there's also a subtle emotional layer here. When the goal becomes fixing the body, the underlying message is that something is wrong. And that message, even when unspoken, creates a lot of emotional tension, and that tension keeps the nervous system further engaged. This is why many people feel stuck in a cycle where they're doing more for their digestion, but they're feeling less and less at ease. The effort itself can become part of the problem, and none of this means that you should really ignore the symptoms or make changes. It just means that the way changes are made matters just as much as what changes are made. Digestion doesn't respond well to pressure and stress, but instead it responds to conditions that allow the body to soften and relax. Because when the nervous system starts to feel safe again, your digestion often improves without force. That's the shift that most people miss. So instead of asking, how do I fix this? A more helpful question becomes, what helps my body feel less on edge? Because calming digestion doesn't start with doing more. It starts with changing the signals that the body is receiving. When digestion is overstimulated, what helps most is not a new protocol. It's a change in signals. The body doesn't need to be convinced or corrected. It needs to feel safe enough to slow down. One of the most important signals is predictability and eating in a way that feels steady instead of random. Not constantly changing timing or foods or routines, but letting the body know what to expect in advance, because predictability reduces the need for the nervous system to stay alert. Another powerful signal is simplicity. Fewer inputs, fewer layers, fewer things to process all at once. And this can and does apply to food, but it also applies to information, because when digestion is sensitive, less is often more. Another supportive signal is warmth. Warm foods, warm drinks, warm environment. Warmth tells the body it doesn't need to brace or contract. For many people, this alone can make digestion feel noticeably easier. Slowing down while eating also matters a lot more than people realize. Not rushing, not multitasking, and not analyzing every single bite. Even a small shift towards presence can help the nervous system downshift. Spacing meals can also be very calming, allowing digestion to complete one cycle before starting another. This gives the system a sense of completion, which is settling for the nervous system. One of the most important shifts is internal, which means moving from monitoring and tracking the body to actually listening to it. Monitoring and tracking keeps the system alert. Listening allows it to soften and relax. Now, this doesn't mean ignoring symptoms. It means responding with support instead of pressure. And remember that another key piece is patience. When digestion has been overstimulated for a long period of time, it doesn't snap back overnight. The body needs repeated experiences of safety. Consistency over time matters a lot more than doing everything perfectly, and this is really important to hear. Calming digestion is not about getting rid of symptoms as fast as possible. It's about changing the conditions that created them. Because when the nervous system starts to feel less on edge, improved digestion often follows naturally. This is why so many people notice improvement when they stop trying so hard. Not because effort is bad, but because ease is regulating. Digestion improves when the body feels supported, not managed. If there's one thing that I hope this helps you see, it's that overstimulation is not a personal failure. It's a natural response to the pace and stressors of modern life, especially for people who care deeply about their health. If digestion has felt unpredictable, sensitive, or hard to manage, that doesn't mean that your body is broken. It means that your system is doing its best to function in an environment that hasn't given it much room to settle. And once you understand that, the goal shifts. It's no longer about fixing yourself. It's about creating conditions where your body can do what it already knows how to do. You don't need to force digestion to work. You need to support the state that allows it to work well. And that's a very different approach to health. And for a lot of people, it's a huge relief. So in next week's video, I'm going to take everything that we talked about here and make it practical. We'll walk through some simple, realistic shifts that can calm digestion without changing your entire diet, cutting out foods, or adding more supplements. Nothing extreme, nothing rigid, just small ways that help the body feel safer and more supported from day to day. If this perspective has been helpful for you, I would love for you to subscribe so you don't miss next week's video. And also don't forget to share, like, and comment. And if this resonated, let me know down in the comments. You can simply write overstimulated or share what you've been noticing in your own body. And remember, you don't need to keep pushing your body to get better. Sometimes the most powerful shift is learning how to let it settle. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in next week's video.